Okay, we're going to continue. This is a Siman that every Chas and Kala need to know, need to learn. Very, very relevant. It involves the Dvarim ha'asurim bizman niduta, things that are not permissible to do while one's wife is a Niddah. Niddah is considered an erva, one who is forbidden to her husband. Certain things are forbidden to him. The difference between this erva and other arayas is that this erva, his wife, will be permissible to him after she has waited her time and she goes to the mikveh. So there's some similarities with other arayas, with other relationships, with other physical contact with other women who are forbidden for us to be in contact, physical contact. So there are some similarities. There are some things that are different by Niddah. Some things that are mutter, whereas by others it's asr, and some things that are asr, whereas by others they may be mutter. Just to understand what is going on here, we need to refer to the Torah, to a pasuk that says, Lo tikravu legalot erva. Torah, in telling us to stay away from a Niddah, to stay away from arayas, uses the word lo tikravu. Don't get too close. That's all it says. But what does it mean to not to get close? Does it just mean intimacy? Or does it mean more than that? What about touching, kissing, hugging? This is very important for us to know, because the Torah doesn't clearly specify what exactly is asr. All it says is that there is an isur to become too close to an erva, someone that is an erva to us. So there's a machlokes Rishonim in the Rambam, the Ramban. The Rambam says that even ma'aseh kirva, anything that constitutes an intimate closeness, not necessarily being intimate, but a closeness of sorts, like an embrace, a hug, or a kiss, if one does that to an erva, with an erva, he gets lashes, according to the Torah. So it's not just bia, it's not just the act of intimacy in itself, it's anything similar to that, that is a form of closeness. So according to the Rambam, these types of closeness would be min Torah. In other words, the Torah had this in mind when it said, Lo tikrevu legalot erva. The Ramban says that this pasuk is only talking about the actual ma'aseh of bia, the actual intimate act. That's what the Torah has in mind here. Stay away during that time. It's forbidden. Not only is it forbidden with other arayas who one cannot be with, intimately involved, it's also for the man to be intimate with his wife during the time that she's a Niddah, because at that time she's considered just like an erva. So the Rabban says the pasuk is talking about bia. All the other kiruvim to arayas, all the other closeness, acts of closeness to arayas, are forbidden midrabanan. If you look at Shuchan Aruch Even HaEzer, because it's not really mentioned here. I mean, here we will talk about all kinds of halakas, but in Even HaEzer, where it deals with certain aspects of arayas, over there it's brought down the halacha in the Tur and in the Shulchan Aruch, like the Rambam, that there's an Isur Torah to do certain things to women who are considered arayas to us. However, everybody's in agreement that there are additional things that will be forbidden midrabanan. Why? Because it comes close to arayas. It comes close to a behavior that would be forbidden according to the Torah. What would be an example of something that could lead to arayas that the Chachamim were concerned about? Shmias kol erva, to hear the voice of a female singer. Talking about live, when you see her. On the radio, it could be that one can see it a little bit differently, even though we don't do this, of course, we don't hear regularly.
If you just walk through Raw Supermarket.
Well, obviously then you're not focusing on just walking through. Not just hearing, it's listening, yes. But Shmias kol erva is a problem. Is obviously going to be an issue, and which brings up the question of what do you do about zemiras on the table? Right. Well, if you have a mixture of kids, boys and girls, it could be a little bit different within the family. But we'll talk about that maybe another time. In general,
why is it zemiras called erva,
right,
as opposed to nash, women? Because erva seems to be a subset.
That which is forbidden to you. In other words, your wife, you can hear your wife.
But another woman, if she's not
singing,
married, she potentially is not prohibited to you. Why are we using the term erva?
We're talking about those that are forbidden to you.
So if I hear a single girl who is not prohibited to me,
Why isn't she prohibited to you?
Exactly.
She is, unless it's your wife,
Daughter.
right?
the Raisa, there's no prohibition on multiple marriages.
Correct, right. Yes.
We're married.
Yeah,
No. So a single woman, I could have more than one.
right.
So a single woman would not necessarily be prohibited to me.
Once she's married to you.
But before she's married to me, why is she
Because
why am I
she's
prohibited to hear her voice in terms of...
Because she's not permissible to you yet, right? There was no chuppah in kiddushin.
Is that...
Right.
I'm trying to figure out why would we...
Right. So there's a certain distance
Okay.
that we have to
I understand the
maintain.
distance, it was just a question of the
Right.
wording.
Right. And kol isha is an erva, is a certain thing that we have to keep distance from.
Just like seeing her naked breasts, even though she's small.
That's the next point. That's the next point. That's exactly the next point. Re'iyas mekoimas mechusim sheba, Basar, looking at the parts of her body that are usually concealed, hair, for example, which is of course the whole issue of covering the hair.
It's a problem because if she's not married,
There's
then
no
you can see her
problem.
practically.
Right, there's no problem. Yeah.
Right.
Talk about an erva.
Yeah.
When it constitutes an erva, which is after she's
So
married.
Here, it's
Yeah.
after she's married.
After she's
Like
married,
the voice, before she's married.
Yes, exactly.
It has to
Yeah.
contract with these.
Yeah, right. So in these particular halachas, the ones that we mentioned earlier, the hugging and the kissing, in this area, in this particular type of halachas, an isha niddah is also included. Okay? Now, as we said before, there are some things that the niddah would be mutter, and these other women would be asr. But when we're talking about the regular chibuk, nishuk, right, all these intimate types of closeness, this would also apply to an isha niddah. Even though shaking one's hand, holding one's hand, is not necessarily a chiba, a form of chiba, you may not look at it as a chiba, as something that shows affection, but the common denominator of anything that is forbidden because of arayas is because even though that may not be the real isser in itself, it could easily lead to it.
So my problem is, what do you do? There are so many Spartans who completely ignore the issue of kissing and embracing as a form of greeting men and women that are even married to each other.
That's right.
So is the question then in terms of, and something I wanted to ask you before,
Sure.
you used the term of closeness.
Right.
You also said too close. There's
Right.
a difference between those two.
Oh yes,
Okay?
yeah.
And is it then by custom and surroundings? His example would appear to be certain groups yes, some groups no, or is there a standard across the board? The Rambam seems to think there's a standard.
No, not really. If you look at the Rambam, if you read the Rambam, you will see that he makes fun of those people who, within a family, even embrace and kiss for no real reason. I mean, it's just because it's customary to do so.
I didn't understand what this Rambam is supposed to inform.
No. So the Rambam, he was asking a question whether it's across the board in Israel or not. There are times that it may be accepted. It may be the norm. For example, with one's grandmother. Okay, nothing wrong with that. The way we were raised, the way we see it, almost pretty much all over the world, it's pretty much accepted.
Okay, so this beautiful daughter of so and so, I see her as my grandmother, and I want to kiss her.
No. Exactly. She's not your grandmother. And then it's...
Your grandmother is
right. Well, what about your aunt? So that is already off limits.
Right.
Your aunt is not your grandmother. See what I mean?
In those cases, she is.
Right. Or your niece. Or your cousin. Female cousin, right?
Yeah.
But your mother and your children is an exception.
And your wife.
And your
She's
wife.
not either.
Right, exactly.
So but it's a huge problem. With
yeah, sure. Yeah. That is.
People who are perfectly 100%.
That is why you need to learn halachas. Yeah,
everything.
you need to learn halachas plus musar, both. Yes.
It seems to take like several lifespans for it.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is what it's all about. Our halachas that are either asur midaraisa or at the very least they're midrabanan. Now there are some things that the Chachamim were meikala.
Shaking hands actually also part of that.
Yeah, we'll eventually talk about that. Sure, shaking the hand or touching any part of the body. Could, yeah, would be a problem. Yes, there are some things that Chachamim were meikal be'ishtoi niddah, with one's wife when she's a niddah, as opposed to other arayas. What would that be? Yichud. We know already by now a little bit about the halachas of yichud, right? The issur of yichud. Under what circumstances can a man be with another woman by themselves? He's a contractor, he's coming to bid on a job, the husband is not home, but he's in town, the door has to be locked, right? How can we arrange that this man who's not her husband be with her alone? Under what circumstances? Under what conditions? So there are very important halachas, legabe yichud, that we have to be careful with. Because if one is not careful with yichud, it could easily lead to trouble. Easily, right? So, with one's wife who's a niddah, he's allowed to be yichud. The concern that exists with yichud with other women does not apply to one's wife. Sooner or later she's going to be in the mikveh, sooner or later she's going to be clean. So we're not so concerned. We're not choishish that he will come to an avera with her because of the yichud. So a husband can be yichud with his wife. In other words, they can be alone, the door can be locked. We're not concerned, we're not choishish that something wrong will happen. She's muteres lo. She's permissible to him after a certain amount of time. So the man says, okay, I'm going to wait. You know what I mean? It's not that much of a concern.
But we don't say that about a couple between Suyin and Kedushin.
Of course not.
Separated.
You're talking about between Erusin, between the engagement, right? Of course, they're still not husband and wife. That's very true.
But ultimately, we assume she will be.
Yeah, but it's not the same because he hasn't been yet with her.
So that's the big difference.
That's the big difference. Having been with the woman once, what's the expression in English? You with ice, you know.
Close you off?
No. No, maybe it's a Hebrew expression. It's a shover et hakerach. It's an expression.
I understand the expression, I'm quite sure how to fit it into this video.
Yeah, in other words, once
breaks the ice.
Is there in English? It breaks the ice. In other words,
when you become more familiar with each other, you're no longer.
Yeah, there's a certain level of familiarity here that prevents a potential issur. Even though there is another saying that says familiarity breeds contempt.
Well, that's another circumstance.
That's under different kinds of circumstances. Here, the familiarity actually does something good.
Yeah, because it takes away the intensity of the desire to immediately.
The intensity, the curiosity, however you want to look at it. Yeah, very true. That's exactly it. Yeah. All right. What else? We will see it beferish inside the halacha, but I'll just tell it to you outside now. Is that a husband can look at his wife at certain parts of her body that are not concealed, even though he enjoys looking at her.
While she's niddah.
While she's a niddah. Shara rayas, with other women, if that's his intent, it's also to intentionally look at women and enjoy it. You know, stare at them for the purposes of enjoying.
So you can't go to beauty.
Yeah. Right. Then we have a third category, the category of certain things that are usher more by a ishtoi niddah, and were not made asur by other arayas. And what are they? The harchakas of this siman. So in this siman, we're going to see all kinds of activities, all kinds of isurim harchakas, keeping distance, things that are not to be done with his wife, one's wife when she's a niddah, that can be allowed with other women. Think of it. Let's see. Just a quick example. You know, can you sit on another woman's bed? Just to sit down for a second. I mean, you wouldn't usually do that, right?
I'm trying to figure out the situation that makes sense.
Right? There's no issa particular. You don't know. I mean, you're sitting down. Give you just a quick example. I mean, by ishtoi niddah, yes, we'll see that it could be a problem. You know, if you want to sit down, you have to be careful where you're sitting down. Anyway, so the harfakas of this siman apply for the most part to his wife when she's a niddah, and not necessarily to other arayas. All right. Now these harchakas that we're going to see here, the Rashba explains that the reason why the Chachamim were machmir by Ishto Niddah is because Liboy Gaspa, as we just said, familiarity. Because of his familiarity, because of his closeness to her, because he's used to her, with a little bit of kiruv, he could easily fall. He could easily come to do something that he's not allowed to do. In other words, he will get used to doing something. It will become easier for him to do it, and he won't realize it, and he will easily come to an isser.
The problem that I'm having, this is across something like, could be 2 weeks. No?
Yeah, 12 days on the average.
Days?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. And now, in the old days when they would have several women,
yeah. Not everybody had several women. Don't assume that. It was permissible, but not everyone was able to afford it.
If it would be a problem, he could. If it
It was before the MasterCard.
Yes. Uh-huh.
If it would be a problem, he could.
Right.
And so then, if within those 2 weeks he really urgently needs to be intimate with someone, he's aroused, he would have someone else that he could be intimate with.
Possibly, if their periods didn't coincide.
But it didn't coincide, which statistically is not very probable, like coincide.
Yeah.
Because if they live together, it often comes.
Really?
Well, I don't know.
Seems to be some connection.
I don't know. It all depends. Yeah, on the nature. But that is true. That is a possibility. And that was one reason why they would have more than one
Right.
baby.
So what does he do in our times? His wife is forbidden to him.
But he has another wife, you said.
No, but in our times he doesn't have another wife.
Well,
It's called
He's not supposed to.
it all depends at what stage in life he's in. You know, the younger people are, the more of a challenge it may be in the beginning. After a while, you get used to it. After a while, you don't think about it. And the older you get, it also is not as much on your mind anymore. But there's definitely certain things that one can do that will help. And that is if one learns Torah, one is involved in ruchnias, in other words, he goes to the mikveh, he doesn't watch stuff that he shouldn't be watching on the internet or on TV.
Or on the street.
He does, or on the street. So he does positive things. He conducts himself properly. There's less of a challenge than otherwise. If a person does not watch himself and goes to places and sees things that he's not supposed to, then obviously,
That's close to amazing.
during the time that she's a Niddah, it will be more difficult for him.
That's oinus close to amazing. But what's really an oinus? And just practically speaking.
Yeah. No, I really haven't heard of people who...
Maybe they don't want to speak about it.
No, that have a problem for 12 days. Yeah. Because that's the psychology here. The psychology here is a man who knows that his wife is muteris to him after a number of days. He just figures, number of days, But it's more than that. It's really the familiarity. Once they got used to knowing each other and they connected, after a while, that curiosity is gone. Or that, like you said, that intensity is not there as much as it was in the beginning. So it's a matter of getting used to it. All right, but anyway, the Rashba seems to explain that the reasons behind the Halakas is more to do with because this additional kiruv could lead to trouble. Whereas the Rosh writes, because they allowed Yichud with Ishtay Niddah, because Yichud was allowed, and he's with her all the time, they were choishesh that they may come to do something wrong. In other words, had Yichud not been permissible, that's something different. But since by Ishtay Niddah Yichud, the Rosh says, is mutar, because of that, there was reason to be concerned that something may happen. They're by themselves. They can't be by themselves. So because of that heter, we have to watch out for other things. All right. So what can not be done and what is permissible? So then maybe we should read it inside first. Man has to stay away from his wife. Intimacy, of course, we're talking about here, while she's tmeya, until she counts the number of days that she needs to count, and she goes to the mikveh. A woman will always remain in her status of niddah, even if it's been 20 years since she was a niddah. As long as she did not go to the mikveh, she is a niddah. So if somebody is becoming a balas tshuva, she never went to the mikveh. She's 60 years old. The last time she had her period was when she was 49. So she hasn't had it for 11 years, let's say. She never went to the mikveh. She has to go now to the mikveh. if she wants to have a normal life with her husband, I mean, even if she has no husband, I mean, she should be clean. She should get rid of that tumor. So if she hasn't done it, even if it's been many years since she had the period, she's still considered a Niddah. During this period of time, the Chaber goes on to say, Velo yischok velo yakel roishimo. You can't joke around with her. You can't laugh with her. Why? Because this kind of levity of the mind, I guess you can call it, Shema yargile avera. This may cause him to chas v'shalom commit an avera. Aval mutar le'isyached imo, as we said before, he's allowed to be isyached, he's allowed to be beyichud with her. Why? Kiva sheba leo pam echos. Since he already was with her at least once, intimately, tu lo takif yitzre. The yetzer is no longer as strong, as intense as it was before he knew her, before he was with her.
He can be with her, but he can't be lightheaded?
In other words, you can't joke around. You can't make jokes and be very funny and do all kinds of things that could possibly lead the two of them to do something more serious. Right. So, I mean, Kalus Rosh, we're not talking about the Kalus Rosh here that is forbidden. A person should never just make jokes for the sake of jokes. Here we're talking about, even if it's something that is just trying to be funny so that he could appeal to her, or that he wants to cause her to laugh, things like of that nature.
I didn't understand.
Well, there's a Kalus Rosh that the Chachamim discourage. I mean, we are serious people, we take life seriously, we're not just jokers, right? Just making jokes all the time and making fun. It's not right, it's not proper. It shows something about the individual. It's not a good characteristic that one is just always joking around.
People used to hire batlanim.
Right, but if it's a tzorech a mitzvah, a batchan, okay? If it's for a purpose, you want to make her laugh, you want her to smile, you want people to be happy, you want to uplift the spirits, that's something else. Even Chachomim, before they started the shir, they would say milsa de b'dichusa sometimes. They would make something light, something funny. They would say something that would bring a smile to the students and wake them up, just to get them into the right mood. That's permissible. That is fine. Not only is it okay, it's actually a good thing to do from time to time, to bring a little bit of humor, to make the atmosphere a little bit lighter. And at home, it's very important because there's tension, there's pressures. So you want to sometimes do something like that. But during the time that she's a Niddah, the type of Kalus Rosh, or the type of Schok that is forbidden, is that which is totally unnecessary. That's only because you want to make her laugh, right? For reasons that have nothing to do with that she may be sad or depressed, just for the fun of it. You want to, play around, joke around, tease her. See what I mean? So these things could be okay during the rest of the month. Part of intimacy involves a little bit of foreplay, as it's called in English. Reassurance, calming the person down, saying a kind word about how she looks. And even something funny too, if that's what will take to lower the pressure. Some people are nervous, so they need that. But when she's a Niddah, this kind of schok and kalus rosh is not permissible. Even though you're not doing anything with your hands, all you're saying are words and things like that, this lack of seriousness could lead to chas v'shalom something that is forbidden. So the Chachamim want to be extra careful not to do things that may lead to an Isra.
The Devarim there for Maisa, for this kind of instance?
The what?
Normally we say that Devarim
right.
ain't a Maisa.
Right.
So for this it would be considered to be a Maisa?
It's not a Maisa in itself. But they may lead to it. They may lead to a Maisa. Okay. Saying certain things about her. It doesn't have to be a joke. Even saying certain things, about her. But this does not mean that you can't buy her flowers.
Well, you can buy her anything.
Right?
Yes, you can buy her anything.
Yeah. What is that?
You can buy her anything.
Yes. The crazy place he brings down, that you can buy her a gift. She just recently gave birth. You want to buy her something, no problem. Or send her flowers, for whatever reason, for Shabbos, for Yontav, even though she's a Niddah, no problem. This is not a problem. But you can't touch her, as we will see in the next Seif.
Do you have to have a reason to buy her the gift, the flowers? Are you afraid there?
No, not really. You want to make her feel good. If she works hard, you appreciate what she does for you.
Someone buys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the gift in itself is permissible.
The gift is permissible.
Apparently, yeah. Seif Beis, lo yiga ba afilu be'etzba ketano. Don't touch her, not even with your pinky. Velo yoshit miyodo liyodo shum dovar. Neither can you hand her something directly in her hand. Velo yikablenu miyodo. Neither can you receive or accept something from her hand. Why? Shema yiga b'besora. You may come to touch her flesh. V'chein alidei zriko miyodo liyodo olehefech asur. So he brings down also here that even by throwing something, the Ramah says, would be asur. So let's spend a few minutes over here because this particular seif is something that happens all the time. What I mean is that we want to hand over things. We want to give something over. Sometimes we need help. What about if the woman is in a wheelchair? What if there's a lot of this particular seif is very significant in that there are quite a few details, and not everyone knows what to do. Because on the one hand, certain things are asur. On the other hand, you don't want to make it public that the wife is a Niddah. It's embarrassing when people see something. Why are you putting down the plate on the table? Why aren't you giving it to her directly? What about the car keys? Why did you throw it at her? Even though we just said you shouldn't throw it either, but some do it a little bit b'shinui. So you see what I mean? This is something that when one learns Hilchas Niddah, but how am I going to do it to conceal the fact that she's a Niddah? I don't want to make it too obvious either. Or what about a baby carriage or a baby stroller going down the stairs in Israel where a lot of people live in apartment buildings? She can't take it down. Can't her husband help her? So that's what we're going to talk about next. These are the kinds of things that come up. The Mechaber says that the problem with touching is because Shema yiga bebesora, right? He says clearly, he might come to touch her Basar. So by handing something over to her, even if he's not touching, he may come to touch. That was a Mechaber. But the Rashba brings down that the reason why this is a Halacha is because handing over things is a kiruv das. It's a certain type of closeness of the minds. It's a certain connection on a certain level. It's small, but it's significant enough that if you allow these kinds of things, a person might think things are normal, as usual, and it could lead him, chas v'shalom, to something worse. So what do? The Mechaber only says that you can't touch, you can't hand over or receive something, and the Ramah says you can't throw. So how do you do it? Well, if you could easily do it in some other way, like putting it down, that's the way it's done. Right? You put it down on the table and let her take it. You don't give it to her directly. But what about if it's a baby? Here, honey, take the baby. All the time. Right? She can't carry him the whole time. What then? So there is a category in Hilchas Niddah, any other halachas too, called Shas Atchak. When we were learning Basar B'cholav and Taaruvot and Melicha, we were more concerned about Hefsed Meruba, the Diabed, things like that. But there is something called Shas Atchak. That some things may not be mutter, but if it's a Shas Atchak, if there's no other way, if it's too difficult to follow the halacha as it is written, there may be some leeway. As we will see, there's a difference between if the husband is sick and he needs his wife's help, versus if the wife is sick and she needs her husband's help. Okay, but we'll see that too. Now, obviously, if there are children in the home, that should solve the problem. There are other people around, but sometimes there's nobody around. So that's called a Shas Atchak. There's nobody around to help you, and you want to do everything properly. So what do? So with a baby, that presents itself sometimes, with certain difficulties. So that many poskim hold that if the baby is already stretching out his hands to go to the father can just easily take him from his wife. Now, she's not actually giving him the baby, and she's not necessarily even putting him down, because there's nowhere to put him down, but if he stretches out his arms, the husband, the father, can take the baby from her. That should not be a difficulty. And that many poskim say is okay, is acceptable. Some are machmir even in that, yeah. As far as throwing something, I saw that the Chochmas Adam brings down that there are some who are makel by throwing it. If he throws it in a way where he's not throwing it directly at her, but throws it up and she catches it. There is
practice that with your porcelain.
Exactly. It all depends what it is that you're throwing. Yeah.
My impression has always been that women are.
But anyway, by Zrika, Me'ikar Din, I think they are Meiko, but they're Machmir in any event. In other words, they say that Me'ikar Din, it could be that it would be permissible to throw it in the way that the Chochmah Sodom brings down. Yeah, but many are Machmir. With the baby, there are some who are Machmir, but I think there's quite a few who are Meiko. Alright, as far as down the stairs, I saw there's a famous Chazon Ish that says that you're allowed to help your wife bring down the stroller down the stairs as long as each one is holding a different side of the stroller. That's the condition. So even though there may be others who are Machmir, who argue that this is maybe not permissible either, it comes back to what we said before. If there's no other choice, we have a Chazon Ish that says it's perfectly okay. Yeah. Right. All right, Sif Gimel. Lo yochal imo ala shulchan. The next halacha deals with eating together. In order to better understand the Seif, let's go back a little bit in time. Remember Basar b'chalav about somebody wants to eat fleishiks and the other one wants to eat milchik on the same table. How do you accomplish that? You basically make a separation between them, two opposite ends of the table. You put something in between them, a flower pot. We want to make sure they don't share food. Right? That's the concern over there. Here, the concern of eating together at the table is that they may come to be very, very close to each other and eat from each other's food, which is a problem. So therefore, the halacha is, even though we'll see there's also a difference between drinking from her cup or eating from her leftovers, right now we're talking about not the leftovers yet, we're talking about just the act of eating together. לא יאכל עמו על השולחן אלא אם כן יש שום שינוי שיהיה שום דבר מפסיק בין קערה שלו לקערה שלו, לחם או קנקן, או שאכל כל אחד במפה שלו. In other words, they should not eat together unless there's some shinui, change on the table that will remind him that his wife is a Niddah. We will see later on also about what she wears to remind him she's a Niddah. In other words, the man sometimes needs to be reminded. So by sitting down at the table as they usually do, which is a little bit of closeness, it's possible if there's a shinui to remind him, and that shinui could be a davar mafsik ben ka'ara shelo leka'ara shelo, or something separating between his plate and her plate. It could be a bread, it could be a pitcher, or that each one eats b'mapa shelo, each one eats on his own mapa, like his own tablecloth. Something that will be a shinui to remind him. Okay, now what's going on here? In the olden days, it was quite common, depending on the country, to eat from one big bowl. It's not like each one had a setting of their own. Today, each one has a setting. Each one eats separate. They don't necessarily eat and grab from the same big bowl, unless maybe it's popcorn and chips, right? Yeah. So still, even though there is already a shino, there's already some harchaka, still we are machmir that there has to be some sort of shinui. I believe the Rosh says that because already in his times, the entire family was eating at a big table, so not only is the table big, but more people are sitting at the table, then you don't have to make a special halacha or shinui. The fact that you have additional people at the table is already sufficient, as we will soon see. So there are Moses like this on this. So yesh aimrim od tzrichim hefsek ben ke'ara shelo leke'ara shelo. That's what the Mechaber said, that you need some hefsek, something dividing between his kara and her kara, is only dafka she'enon oichlim beke'ara achas k'shita hoira. When usually when she's clean, they do not eat from one kara, but from individual karas. But if ordinarily when she's clean, they do eat in one kara, k'shita, when she's clean, then sagi, then now it will be enough. If she just eats in her own bowl, you don't need a separate heker shinui on the table. V'chen noyagin, and that's the minhag. That's perfectly fine. You wouldn't need an extra heker on the table. So in the Isser of Achila, as a whole, the opinion of many Rishonim, I think the majority, is even if each one is eating from his own ke'ora, right? Like the Mechaber said, unless you make a shinui. But there are those who hold that if you do place other people around, then you could be mekel. The sheet of the Rambam is, however, very different. The Rambam holds that the whole Isser is only eating from one big bowl. To eat from separate bowls is never an issue. So here, all we've discussed was the act of eating together. Does the act of eating together present a problem? The Mechaber says, yeah, you gotta have some heker, and this is a separate issue than the issue of eating from leftovers that we're going to see next.
If you can go back a moment.
Yeah.
You talked about putting a separation.
Right.
And you used as one of the examples, if I remember correctly, putting bread between.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, when we were dealing with the use of the Basar, we were very concerned about putting a bread between. That they would both
if they eat from it.
From the same bread.
Right. Here we're not talking about eating from the same bread.
So the bread would just be there for show?
Right, for a hefsek. I should have said, the Taz brings it down. The Taz brings down that as far as this lechem of kankan, one pitcher, that they don't eat from that bread. They ain't shoysim oiso kankan. Dumya the Siman Peches, just like we saw in Siman Peches. So very, very, very right. That as long as they're not eating or sharing that kankan, it's there only to serve as a reminder of the heker. Alright, so that we saw the halacha regarding eating together. And today, if one does have additional people on the table, it's usually not a problem. Sif Dalet, however, talks about leftovers. One should not drink leftovers of her cup that she drank from. So what's this all about? We have leftover drinks and we have leftover food. And if you read the Mechaber, he doesn't talk about leftover food. The Ramah does. Before we go to Sif Dalet, the second half of the Ramah speaks about leftover food. Some say that it's forbidden to eat from her leftover food. Just like it's also to drink from her leftover drink, as it will be explained in the next seif. So the Ramah here introduces us to this halacha of eating leftover food from her. And pay attention to this important detail. It's only talking about him eating her leftover food or drink, and not the other way around. So before we go to the Mechaber halacha of drinking what she left over, we need to understand what's this problem of eating leftover food.
So, 1 second.
Yes.
You said that the Ramah brings down food as a yesh omer.
Yesh omer, right.
Is he saying the drink is not a yesh omer? Everybody agrees with that, or is the drink also only a yesh omer?
No. It's a question of which one is more chamer. That there is a machlekes, we're going to soon see. But so far, all we know is that the Mechaber, in talking about leftovers, does not mention food. So the Ramah brings it down by yesh omer, and this is also taken from the Yereim, who learned this Isser from a Mishnah in Shabbos about a Zav and Zava. And over there, it's mevur, it's obvious, it's clear that the Mishnah said that the Isser applies on the man and not on the woman. So from that we learned that she would be muteres with leftover food from her husband. But what's the reason behind it? Why would it be more chamer by the husband than by the woman? So he explains over there, because ha'ish, the man, is more margil le'avera, more than the isha. And therefore we're chashim. Margil le'avera means that he is more susceptible, perhaps you can say that word, to cause an avera, more so than the woman being the cause or the initiator. So because of that, by him doing something that is a chiba or kirva that may lead to something, we're more choishish by him than by her. But this is not for everything. This is just an example.
I'm trying to understand that for leftover food, because if it's leftover, then she's done, her plate has been pushed away. It's separate from her. Either she's gotten up from the table or she's...
Oh, no. That's already different. Gotten up from the table...
What are we dealing with here?
Right, gotten up from the table, we don't know that yet. All we know that is that she's still present.
But if she pushed away the food, why would that...
Not only that. Let me give an example which will be permissible. let's say there's a whole bunch of food items in her plate, and she only ate one of them, and she left the rest she didn't touch. That's not called leftover. That is forbidden for him to touch. It's only if she ate part of it and left the other half. She bit from a little challah, a piece, she ate a little bit of it and left the rest of the challah there. She bit it with her mouth. She didn't even cut it. Had she just cut off a slice and left and put away the rest, that's different. If there's a bowl, all kinds of food items that she took for herself, but she only ate one of those items and she left the rest, she didn't eat the rest. That's not called leftover food. But it's important to keep in mind that if she left the room, one is allowed to drink, one is allowed to eat from the leftovers. We will soon see that there's an additional issue of drinking, on which the Shach says that achila, he considers achila is more chomer than shtia. The food is more chomer than the drinking. But other poskim were more machmir b'shtia, not all of them in achila. So that's why the Mechaber doesn't mention even achila. All he says is lo yishte mishiyure kol sheshos sohi. The Shach just adds, what's lo yishte? Mashma afal pi shechozru umal'uhu. Even though they went back, the waiter went back and filled it again. Then they filled it up again, asur. The mikol mokim who shoysim is Yore Deah, he's still drinking from what she left behind. Avalim shoseso, he kol hakois, he drank the whole cup umeluhu. Then they filled it up near the mutar. It appears to be mutar. Chem matzati babach, v'afagav shekosa beis Yosef v'anu noyagim miyad ladiach hakois ben shtia didei l'shtia didah. Even though some people rinse the cup in between the drinking, between her drinking and his drinking, we don't have that minhag. In other words, once it's empty, it's empty. Anyways, as we said before, the Shach says that achila is more serious than shtia. Okay, that's the Shach's opinion. So the Mechaber says, Lo yishte mishir kol sheshos. Here, the Ramah adds, Im lo shemafsik odom echa b'neihem, unless the Ramah says if somebody is in between the two of them. Or unless you spilled out the contents of the cup to another cup, even if you went back and put it into the original cup. And if she drank and he doesn't know about it, because he wants to drink from her cup, she doesn't have to tell him not to drink from it. He doesn't know that she drank from it. She's allowed to drink from his cup that he drank. And if she drank from a cup and she left, some say he's allowed to drink the leftover because once she leaves the room, there's no more chiba here. Alright, in Hay, we talk about lo yeshet b'mita miyuchedes la, afilu shelo b'foneh. She should not sit on her bed even if she's not around. So this one is a little bit more chamor than drinking or eating her leftovers. Even if she's not present in the room, she's not there, unless she's out of town. That's different. Otherwise, lo yeshet b'mita miyuchedes la, if it's her bed, you should not sit on the bed, afilu shelo b'foneh. Okay, but what if it's not a bed? What if they're sitting on a bench? What about sitting in a car? What about sitting in a bus next to each other? These are the various details that come out of this halacha. So we need to understand what is the issue here of sitting on a bed or sitting close to each other. So maybe I'll just read the Ramah first, then we'll explain it. The Mechaber only spoke about a bed. Obviously, what we know just by reading the Mechaber, that it's a form of chiba, and it could lead to all kinds of thoughts, and thoughts could lead to all kinds of actions. The Ramah says also leisha bal safsal aroch shemitnadedet ve'ina mechuberet lakotel k'sheishto niddah yeshol. You cannot sit on a safsal, on those swings, those benches that swing, that is not connected to the wall, when his wife, as a niddah, is sitting on it. There's a problem there. We'll see what the problem is in a minute. Yesh matinim shadom achar mafsik v'yoshim. Some are matir this when somebody else is sitting in between them. All right. V'chein lo yelech im ishtoi ba'agola achas o besfino achas im oilech rak derech tiyul kegon leganot ufardesim. Should not travel with his wife in the same chariot or in the same little boat. I'm not talking about a cruise over here. If he's only going for, as we say in Yiddish, ashpatzir, for leisure. Is that the right translation? Yeah. Like going to a park. So if he's going for business from city to city, even though they're both together, him and his wife, as long as they sit in a way that they don't come to touch each other. Alright, so what's going on here? What's this problem all about? Some say that this halacha is learned or inferred from another more serious halacha that says that a wife cannot do the husband's bed in front of him. The sheets, bedspreads, when she's a niddah, because this kind of an act is an act of chiba, and this is something that she ordinarily does, and by him seeing that, it's not very healthy. So we infer if she cannot do that, then he cannot sit on her bed because of similar ideas that may come to his head. Some do not answer it, at all. But some say that we infer it from something that is more serious. And Beis Yosef is the one that explains that this could lead to all kinds of thoughts. The Shach brings down the Bach and says sitting on the bed is not a problem. Bach cholek the dafka lishkav sham. To sleep on it is different when he takes off his clothing. But to sit down when he's fully dressed is not an isser, even if it's in front of her. But that's the Bach, and that's the Shach who quotes the Bach. The Taz says it's usher, even just to sit, even not to sleep. Unless, of course, she's not in town, then it's okay. So here we're having a little bit of a difference in opinion of whether just the sitting in the bed constitutes a problem or not. Whereas sleeping in the bed is something completely different. However, what the Ramah mentions here about traveling together, that needs to be further analyzed. What's wrong with sitting on the same bench? So some Rishonim say the problem with the bench is not the sitting together, it's the actual movement, the swaying. Yeah? The swinging. That swinging is the problem here. It's not just the sitting together. Whereas others learn that the problem with safsal is not swinging, it's the fact that they are together close to each other in a particular pose, right, on a safsal, as opposed to being just on two chairs close to each other. The fact that this bench connects them is the issue, whereas others say it's not the bench per se, it's the swinging. So if it would not be swinging, if it would be connected to the ground, there's no problem. So traveling by bus together, sitting in a car together, as long as they're not touching, it shouldn't be a problem.
And the movements of the car are not correspond to the...
Not exactly, yes. Some mention that, the fact that the car is moving and maybe things are moving, but I think unless you're sitting in a back seat, I think many cars today have separate seating, right?
The front seats are generally...
The front seats for sure are separate, so it shouldn't be a problem, yeah. But as long as they're not touching, as long as they're not too close to each other, it wouldn't present a problem.
Oh, many years ago, but they also had front seats.
That were single, yeah. Years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's the differences of opinion brought down by the Rishonim as to what the problem of sitting on a bench is. It's like negia, or it may come to negia, it may come to touching. That's if it's swinging. But in the Truma Sadeshin, it brings down that the problem is that they're together on the safsal. And that's a form of ma'aseh chiba, just sitting together, even though it's not swinging. So the question is, what happens if you're going by car? So I don't think, for the most part today, it's an issue, because it's the car seat is more like a safsal mechubar, if anything. It's more like it's connected to the ground. It's not swinging really, and you don't have to be that machmir as long as they're not touching. In Sivav, you have the biggest problem of all for many couples, and that is not sleeping on the same bed, which many people do not understand. You get married, a Jewish couple gets married, they don't have a king-size bed or a queen-size bed. They either have two separate beds, which they bring close to each other if they want to when she's not a niddah, and they separate them when she is a niddah. Or if somehow they inherited some king-size bed from Henry VIII that they must have, the man simply sleeps on the floor, or on a mattress on the floor, if that's what they want. What's not advisable is to sleep in different rooms. I don't hold with that, even though some people do that. First of all, the kids wonder what's going on. Are they fighting again? Why aren't mom and daddy sleeping in the same room? And you don't want to make it too obvious either that you're separating beds all the time.
But I think then you can have a separate small bed on the side of the...
Right, there's all kinds of solutions to it. Yeah. The best thing to do is to always keep the beds apart a little bit, even a little bit. And then if you want at night, you can bring them together. And in the morning, you separate them. But if you keep them always together, and then all of a sudden they're separated, it draws attention. Why, what happened now? So you have to use your best judgment as to what's the best solution to handle this. But one big bed is usually not the ideal choice for a frum couple.
Unless they have enough room for a second small bed for the soul.
Yeah, unless of course you can accommodate another bed in the room. Maybe. Yeah. But it's...
I mean, some of these palaces here that you have apart.
Yeah. So they can't sleep, they can't sleep on the same bed, even though they're both fully clothed, unless the beds are slightly, at least separated. What's slightly? The halacha doesn't really bring the measurement. So the halacha basically says, as long as they can't stretch their hands and touch each other, or as long as the bed linen, the covers, do not move, far enough to touch the other. As long as there's a little bit of a distance, that should be sufficient.
Well, the hands move, that's a significant distance.
Sure. Right, no. So usually depending on the size of the bed, if you have twin size beds or you have 48, what's called full size beds, it depends on the size of beds. Today our mattresses are pretty big compared to what they had in the past.
How do you measure the touching with the hands?
You just try it out.
On the edge of their mattress.
Right.
And they're stretching across.
Yeah.
And then their hands meet in the middle.
We're only concerned about the hands touching?
Yeah, basically, because the hands are the ones that usually move around. And if the hands can touch, even though the rest of the body's not touching, it's still asur. Right. So if you have accomplished that enough of the distance where the hands really won't be able to touch, that's fine.
And that's even though both are on the respective edges of their bed facing each other.
Yeah, that's not a problem. But
no.
If you had,
no, I'm saying because if so, then the distance between the beds must be very significant. I mean, an arm has quite some length.
Right.
Double this, that's her arm on the other side.
Right.
So that's a very big distance between the beds. If you're calculating that kind of distance, you easily have room for another small single bed in the room if the beds were standing together.
Well, if the beds are standing together and they're twin-sized beds, the hands can touch. Okay?
But they're not supposed to.
Right. So you have to put
how
some...
far do you have to move them apart?
So some say an amma, some say enough space where you can't touch.
But if you're saying you can't touch in an hour, it's two different measurements.
No. So you have to figure it out depending on the size of your bed.
No,
what you cannot do... Arms, okay. What you cannot do is have a very wide bed and each one sleep in its own corner. Because even though if they're very far apart, it's still the same bed. Exactly. So here, all it is about making sure that they don't touch. And that's what the Chaber says, Lo yishan ima b'mito, afilu kol echad b'binto v'noigim zeh, they don't touch. V'afilu yesh lekol echad matzah b'fnei atzmo, even though each one has his own, mattress and blanket. V'afilu im shechvim bebeis mitos, v'amitos noigim zu bezu, and even if they are in two separate beds, and the beds are touching, it's also asur. But asur meaning here that they can come to touch physically. Okay, if there is a little bit of space between them, even if it's not that much, where they don't touch, it would be permissible. Okay, I think we'll stop here and just continue next week.
Okay.